Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing and welcome to episode 159 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This time I'm revisiting something that we've talked about before, which is USB on the Commodore Amiga. Yes, most of our Amigas can theoretically support USB with the right hardware. Now, in the past, I've done a review on the Rapid Road card, which is a 100 base T networking card made by our friends at Indivision, and it supports plugging in, it's actually the X100 card that the Rapid Road then plugs into, which gives you a nice, fast USB interface on the big box Amigas, anywhere from an Amiga 2000 to an Amiga 4000 and anything in between that has ZORRO2 or ZORRO3 slots. Now, the USB speed on the Rapid Road is quite good. It does a pretty good job. You know, these are not USB 3.0 speeds on your i7 machine, but they do a pretty good job. On the low end, in the past, we've been able to order this thing called a thylacine card. Now, this came out a little bit after some of the cards like the Deneb and the Subway card, which have not really been available in a couple of years, and quite a few years to be perfectly honest. The thylacine is a pretty nice little card. I'll see if I can put an image of it up there, but it is slow as a turtle. Even on my nice 68040 based Amiga 4000 I used to run it on, the thing was just painfully slow. Fine for keyboard, fine for mouse, but you try to hook up something like a flash drive to it, and yeah, it's just slow. But it was cool. It was, plug it in, works. Now, I caught wind a while back of a new type of USB card that was being designed. You can't usually just walk into one of the Amiga stores and buy them, but you can special order them from people who make them, like on Amiga and a couple other places, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And what I'm talking about are these. This is the Freeway Triton Lite. Now, take a look at that, inchy purty. You've got a USB header right there, or a USB port right there, and you also have a USB header for plugging something like this into it, which is what we're going to be doing. See, you got a little flash drive in there. Now, the Freeway Triton Lite is the latest in a couple of different lines of USB devices for the Amiga. I want to show you what's made and who makes them. So come on, let's take a look at my PC and we'll see what's up. So you'll see here, this is freeway.mattymuck.day. The Freeway cards were designed by our good friend Matthias Hampel. Probably butchering the name, but hey, that's okay. And if you take a look at this site, you'll see that there's a couple of different Freeway USB cards that he's designed. This one is a ZORRO2 USB card with 4 USB ports and a clock port. This one is Freeway GBA for use with the GBA interface. This is a Freeway Pro USB cards with 3 USB ports and either 512 or 1 meg cache or flash, and that flash lets you like load some drivers for the Freeway card on the flash drive and do some other fancy things with it. The Freeway CP is a clock port interface with 4 USB ports. The Triton is the direct predecessor of the Triton Lite with 3 USB ports, Z2 and Z3 interface, which is nice, and 16 megabytes of flash memory. And then the Triton Lite, which is what I have, which is a USB card with just Z2 and Z3 and no flash memory. You can see a picture of the cute little card here. Now, ZORRO2 and ZORRO3 interfaces with auto select, which is absolutely true. If you plug it into an Amiga 2000, it will absolutely come up as a ZORRO2 card and run slower, which we'll talk about in a bit. If you plug it into a 3000 or 4000, it is recognized as a ZORRO3. If you want to force it into ZORRO2 mode, there's a jumper right here. Just put the little jumper on there, and it will act like a ZORRO2 card even on a ZORRO3 machine. USB 1.1 and 2.0, USB 2.0 high speed mode, 480 megabits per second. Will you ever see that in an Amiga? No, you will not. But ZORRO2 and ZORRO3 modes, you can get theoretically 3.25 megabytes per second in ZORRO2 or 6.5 megabytes per second in ZORRO3. Now, I have not seen these speeds even on my 68060, but it is fast. Now this is nice here. Overload and short circuit protection for all ports. That's something I think that Jens does not have in his Rapid Road, which is why you can plug a device, you can hot plug a device into a Rapid Road, and suddenly your Rapid Road becomes a paperweight. This is supposed to have some degree of protection. Now here, this is true. 68030 at 25 megahertz. Will it run in a slower system? Probably, but you will never be happy. And part of that is the way that the Poseidon interface works, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, the cool thing about this, you can build it yourself. You can just click here, brings up a nice bill of materials for creating it yourself. And it's an interactive one, so you can see as I'm scrolling down through here, it's actually highlighting the different components, where they're located. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer, unlike me, you can actually order all the parts and build your own Freeway Triton Lite card, which is really, really cool. And all of these different Triton cards have a bill of material. So let's take a look. Like if you wanted one of these other ones, the full Freeway Triton, you have the option of getting that information here. And yep, here's the bill of materials. You can do the same thing right here. You can also update the firmware very easily on here with a flash memory. Under downloads, what we have is a licensed version of Poseidon. What Poseidon is, if you haven't seen my video on USB that I did a couple of months, maybe a year or so back, that is a USB stack for all Amiga USB devices. Virtually all of them use that Poseidon, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And this comes with the drivers both for ZORRO2 and ZORRO3. That's kind of cool. Poseidon is a resource hog. There is no denying, you'll never convince me that Poseidon is not a resource hog. It is. So you really need a fast machine to run it. Let's take a closer look at everything. Back looking at the card here, you saw it on the screen a minute ago, but here's the real thing right here. Very well designed, very, very well implemented. And I'll tell you in a few minutes who did my card for me. It is critically important, because Zorro cards are not keyed, that you plug it in the proper way. That says front, plug that towards the front of your machine. Do not plug it in backwards or you will guaranteed fry the card. And you can plug these in backwards. Boom, plug it in backwards. You've got yourself a dead card, and hopefully not a dead Amiga 2. Let's go ahead and plug it into my Amiga 4000 and see how we use this. So my Amiga 4000 right here, you see I've got a CD-ROM on there. I did a show a couple of months ago about putting a second IDE channel. I'll put a link in it right up at the top here. And it's got a little SATA SSD card or SSD drive in it right here. Does not make it any faster than if I put just a compact flash card, but it does give me the flexibility of using an actual SATA SSD. ZORRO3 slots. This will work in any of the ZORRO3 slots. Right now I've got a Picasso 2 and I still have my X100 and Rapid Road in here. We're going to follow the rules. Put this in the front. Jippity gippity bippity boo. She goes right in. Now I want to take my little USB headers here, which I can mount to the back, and I will eventually. Now the cool thing is these are actually keyed, so you can only plug the headers in one way. Now normally I'd put this on the back, but I don't know if this is going to be the permanent home for the little guy. Now we're going to power it on. Now the drivers for the actual Freeway card, like I said, are available right on the website that I showed you a few minutes ago. You can download it as an LHA file, or you can download it as an ADF file, which I'm really surprised because I didn't think Poseidon would fit on a single floppy, but it does. You can also download the drivers independently for the ZORRO2 or the ZORRO3 interface. Let's take a look at some of the lights on here. We've got a nice bright little LED. It's not nearly as bright in person as it looks on here. We have a Z2 light on here. So if I had put this into Z2 mode instead of its default Z3 mode, you'd see a red Z2 light come on, which is kind of cool. You can see fits right in there nicely, does not take up a lot of space. Once you download the Freeway drivers from the website that I already showed you, now I have this on my PC in the other room, and I'm using the SMB networking interface that I've covered in the past to actually connect there. You can also download them via FTP, and you can probably download them directly with iBrowse. I wouldn't doubt if the website works okay, or get it over to your Amiga any other way you want to. You see, there's a couple different files. We're only going to need one. Freeway install disk v4.5.adf. That is an actual ADF file that you could mount on a GoTech, which is really cool. These are the Freeway Triton 2, ZORRO2 and ZORRO3 device drivers. Now I'm only going to need the ZORRO3 one for the time being. They're very small. Those are also included in this archive, the Poseidon 4.5 install freeway.lha, which is just a little bigger than a floppy disk, so it's not going to fit right on a floppy. You want to copy that one over if you want to do the full install. Now, what I'm going to do before I unarchive this right here, I'm going to create a new drawer that I'm going to call Poseidon 4.5. Let's call it Poseidon Freeway. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because when you decompress this program, it does not create its own folder, so it will get all squished up inside of your like downloads folder, if that's what you use. So we're going to go here, work 1200 : downloads. Now, why is my folder called Work 1200 instead of Work 4000? Because a couple months ago I copied over one of my Amiga 1200 installs onto this flash drive here, and I never renamed it. Now, inside my Poseidon Freeway, we're going to do LHA E Poseidon 4.5 install freeway.lha. Let it do its magic and decompress. Now, when I go into my Poseidon Freeway folder, let's make these look like icons. Yay! We're going to do Poseidon install English. We're going to do expert user in this case because I want to show you some of the options. Yeah, did you read all that? Good. What drivers do we want to install? We do not need any of these drivers. There's no reason to install any except the ones we want to. These are drivers for the other Freeway devices. We only want the 2 and the 3 drivers here. Now we're going to copy those over. These are all the different classes of USB devices that will work. There's an Adaptec driver, the keyboard, mouse driver, some camera drivers, which I've never gotten to work, Ethernet drivers, which work sometimes, maybe, HID for other input devices, mass storage, which is the critical one right here. You want all of these drivers installed for sure. All right. More drivers here, USB video, USB audio, printer drivers, all of those, because all of these give the Amiga the capability of talking with various USB devices. This is the guide. Yes, the guide is very helpful. Yep, we want the preferences driver. Absolutely. Copying Trident. Yes. PSD ROM tag. We want this. What that does is that will help you for things like keyboards and mice to load before the whole Poseidon thing loads. We want to load all of these tools. And we want Poseidon to automatically be started on boot up. Absolutely. Now here's important stuff. Bonus material in the extras drawer, including FAT95. Yes, we don't care about most of this other stuff. We care about FAT95. We're going to uninstall that to RAM just to make things easy. If you do not have the FAT95 driver, you will not be able to see USB devices. It said it's put those in the RAM drawer. That's fine. In the RAM drive. Some of this stuff, you know, they're just different icons. That's fine. You want to go in this FAT95 folder. You want to go to English because it's the only language that matters. And let's clean that up. And you want to install FAT95. That's going to install the driver that allows it to see things like the FAT16 and the FAT32 file system that you're going to want to use for your flash drive. So you would install that. There's actually nothing to this install. Once you double click it, it just copies over a couple files. It's done. You don't even see what's happening. Then you would reboot your Amiga, and once you reboot it, you're going to go into your prefs folder, and you're going to see a new icon that is incredibly ugly. This one called Trident. They've got this in some funky color scheme that never looks good on my machine. When you launch Trident, you're going to see a couple of different options here. First of all, here's half-naked Poseidon, which is awesome. A little bit of information about it. We're going to go to controllers. Now look what I have here. I have my Rapid Road running at the same time as my Triton. I have two USB controllers running in my Amiga 4000 at the same time. My Amiga 4000 does not care. What you're going to do when you first launch it is you're going to click on New. You're going to tell it, hey, there's my Triton 3 ZORRO3 USB device. Or, hey, there's my Triton USB ZORRO2 device. Whichever mode you're using it in, ZORRO3 or ZORRO2, you're going to select it and you're going to click OK. And then you're going to tell it either to go online. See, I'm going to turn mine offline. That just turns off the USB. I'm going to turn it back on. Boom, my USB is turned back on. You're going to turn yours on. You're going to click Save. Save will tell it to save this configuration right here that we have. So whenever I turn mine on, it launches the Rapid Road driver. It launches the Freeway Triton driver. Now, when we look at devices here, let's see exactly how all of this works. Okay, let's watch the screen as we work some magic. Here, I have an 8 gigabyte flash drive. This happens to hold about 8 gigabytes of 3D Amiga software, which is really cool. Got this at Amy West last year. And here is my USB header. I'm going to plug the little guy in. Ba-dink. Watch what happens. Look at that. Amiga 3D shows right up on the screen. This is my actual USB drive. See, 57 megs free out of 7.4 gigs. Let's show all the files and let's view them by name here. There we are. 3D Demon, 3D Professional, Aegis Animator, all these different files right on this in this flash drive here. And you see it's an 8 gig flash drive. It sees it absolutely perfectly. Now when we go into Trident, let's see what Trident says about it. It says it's detected a mass storage device. Absolutely. It binds it to this thing called mass storage class here. So it knows exactly what it is. And you're able to use it just like an Amiga drive. Now, what else can this thing support? Well, let's say we want to use a little mousey. Let me show you what I've got here. This is a nice bog standard Lenovo USB mouse. Here's the little mouseification right here. Watch what happens here. We're going to plug it in. Now, personally, I never plug USB devices in the wrong way. Every single time I've done it for the past 25 years, every time I've plugged it in the right way, never upside down. Trust me. Okay, hey, look at this. My little mousey is now moving around the screen. This mouse is now controlling this Amiga with no problems at all. And believe me, it is 10 times smoother than using an Amiga mouse. Right mouse button works just fine, no problem at all. Now, scroll wheel, holy guacamole. The scroll wheel is working absolutely perfectly. Let's go up here. Look at this. Scroll wheel, la da 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 da. I am scrolling with a scroll wheel plugged right into USB. Now, if you boot a game from floppy that requires a mouse, is this going to work? No, not at all, because it doesn't launch the USB stack from a floppy disk from, you know, your old Arkanoid or something like that. But for general Windows or Amiga OS based stuff, or running a game from Amiga OS, it very likely may work. Let's try a few other things. Sorry to disappoint you all, but you probably won't be seeing much of my handsome mug in this next couple minutes of tests. Here we have a cheap and cheerful little Magic Eagle USB keyboard. Let's plug it in, see if she works. Keep an eye on the screen. Keyboard lights up, see it's got all kinds of fancy little bright colors. And a new USB keyboard was detected. Let's see if she works. We're going to go into Text Edit, which is a delightful little text editor. Here is a happy test of this keyboard. My goodness, she works absolutely flawlessly. Except I typed the wrong name. Keyboard works absolutely fantastic. Again, you know, will it work with a game you boot from floppy? No, but it'll work with almost anything else. Next, let's try a nice generic card reader. This is a Belkin card reader, so it's got compact flash, it's got, geez, even smart media, SD, micro SD. It's got all the little card ready things on it. We're going to plug it in, see what happens. A new USB reader bound to mass storage device. That looks good. Now we're going to grab a compact flash card and try and plug it in the right direction. See if she shows up. We'll see. Huh, that does not show up. Maybe we need more power for the device. Let me plug in some additional power for it. And, look, I plugged in the second cable for power. Power's right up. This is the actual compact flash card that I use sometimes in my Amiga 1200, and it comes right up on the screen. Here's the Work 1200 directory. This is being read right off the compact flash drive. Absolutely beautiful. You can see that right there. Absolutely. The card reader works fantastic. Here's something I haven't tested before. This is my nice Logitech joystick. I use this with my Amiga. It is a wireless joystick. I have no idea what it's going to do. It might explode. I'm going to plug it in. Logitech cordless Rumble Pad 2 shows up right on the screen. Look at that. Oh, has been removed. No class seems responsible. Okay, recognizes the device. doesn't know what to do with it, a driver would have to be written to use this as a joystick. Now I have no idea what to expect with this. This is my Unitech interface. This has the ability to use a standard IDE drive to plug in here, one of the 3.5. Has the ability to plug in a standard 2.5-inch IDE drive, and then there's an adapter to give it power. And it has the ability to plug in a SATA drive. I happen to have a little SATA drive right here. I'm going to plug it right in. All right, so we now have a SATA drive plugged in. Now I'm going to plug this into the USB and give it some power. Okay, bound to mass storage, external hard drive. Now, I would not doubt a bit that it's not going to be able to read this drive because it is absolutely probably formatted in NTFS. I probably ripped this out of a laptop. But what if we can do this? I'm going to go ahead and set this down so I have two hands. What if we go into HD Toolbox here? Now, by default, when you launch HD Toolbox, it's going to be looking for things under the SCSI.device. These USB devices are not going to show up under SCSI device. It's their own device that it creates on the fly. Let me show you what that device is called. We're going to go into Show Config here. We're going to go under Devices, and look at this. USB SCSI.device, USB Pegasus, USB Parallel. It's going to see it as USB SCSI. So what if we change this right under here, information. We're going to call this, tell it to look for USB SCSI. And I am typing this on the wrong keyboard because I've already unplugged the USB keyboard. Smooth move, Douglas. USB. Now we're back on the Amiga keyboard. All right, now when I launch it, might work, might not. We shall see. Look at this, an unknown device. I'm going to change it. We're going to define it. Because of a bug, this does not work, so we're going to call it test 2. Read the drive. Read as much possible data from the drive. Insufficient data returned by inquiry. But look at it, sees it as a 700 gigabyte drive, which it very well may be. We're going to click OK. Drive name. We're going to call this Happy. That's the Happy drive. No idea if this is going to work. We're going to save it. We're going to partition it. There's 350 gig partition and a 350 gig partition. We're going to call this XDH3. I don't want it to interfere with anything. And we're going to give it a nice big fat block size. We're going to call this one XDH4. All right, we're going to give this a nice big block size. And we give it a big block size because if we don't, because they're such huge partitions, we are going to run out of RAM when it tries to verify these drives, and we don't want to do that. Neither one is bootable. That's fine. We're going to do OK. We're going to do save. And there we go. Now it wants to reboot, which is absolutely fine. We'll reboot and see if it actually works. My goodness, look at that. XDH3 uninitialized, XDH4 uninitialized. We're going to format them. 350 gig capacity. We're going to call this one Booger. Fast file system. Let's do a quick format on here. We don't want it to take 3 years to format. And we're going to format this one, and we're going to call this one Snot. We have Booger, we have Snot. Booger is a 350 gig partition on a SATA drive plugged into this little beastie right there. Plugged into USB on my Amiga 4000, and it recognizes it just perfectly. Now let's take a look at the speed here, okay? So we've got Booger opened, and we're going to go ahead and go into my downloads folder, and we're going to find a pretty big file. Okay, this LHA file, PGS34B9.LHA, I don't even remember what that is, but it is a 7 megabyte file, 7.2 megs. So we're going to take it, we're going to drag it over to Booger, and we're going to see how long she takes. For a 7 meg file, not half bad. Not half bad at all. And now we should be able to show all files. Look at that, there's our LHA file. Not too darn shabby. Recognizes a 350 gig partition without any issues at all. Transferring files just fine. So I had mentioned that you can put this in ZORRO2 mode even on a ZORRO3 machine, and you might want to do that for compatibility. I'll explain why I needed to do it in a little bit. But let's take a look at some of the speed differences. I used this card in ZORRO2 mode, and I used this card in ZORRO3 mode, and I ran disk speed 4.2. Okay, things like our file create, file open, directory scan. See the numbers right here, 166 files a second, 213 files a second. Let's compare it to ZORRO3 mode. A little bit faster, not anything to write home about, but all the creation is a little bit faster. Now, where the speed difference really jumps is down here. Let's say testing with 262,000 byte long-aligned buffer. Okay. 1.7 megabytes per second, 1.8 megabytes per second, pretty good for a USB. Let's take a look when we go to ZORRO3. Same thing, 262 bytes, long-aligned buffer, 3 to 3.3 megabytes per second in ZORRO3. So in some instances, almost twice as fast as ZORRO2 mode. In most instances, it's going to be maybe 20-30% faster in ZORRO3 mode. So now we have a really nice Freeway Triton Lite card that works in your ZORRO enabled Amiga, whether it's ZORRO2 or ZORRO3. We've proven it's pretty fast. Now, full disclosure, this is running on a 68060 machine. I've got my A3640 card in here, and I've got my little adapter that converts the 040 chip socket into an 060 chip socket, but it's running with just the 16 megabytes on my Amiga 4000 without any additional fast RAM. I've got a whole reason for doing that. It runs well that way. It'll run great on a 68040. No problem at all. You'll have good performance. Probably not quite as good as on a 68060, but it'll still work. Make sure you got plenty of RAM. Make sure you got a fast CPU. It'll work fine on an 030. Don't try it on an 030 slower than 25 megahertz. You won't like the performance. Your best bet is maybe a 40 or a 50 megahertz 030 if you're going to be using one of those slow machines. But if you want USB on your Amiga, you're going to have a fast Amiga anyways. Now, a couple of little caveats. I tried this card in ZORRO2 mode on my Checkmate system, which is my Amiga 500, with a Vampire in it, my Vampire V2, and the ZORRO2 slot that is available for Steven's awesome Checkmate case. Recognizes the card just fine in ZORRO2 mode, loads the drivers just fine, does not work properly. Absolutely does not work properly. I could sometimes get a mouse to work. It would sometimes recognize a flash drive, but then it would corrupt the data on the flash drive. I suspect it's an issue with the Vampire, and the Vampire is probably just not going to be compatible with it, but it could be the ZORRO2 slot in that Checkmate case too. I don't know. I tried this in my Amiga 3000 with my Amiga board in it from Chucky Hertel, and I've got a video up there reviewing that with my sob stories about it. Recognizes it fine in ZORRO3 mode. I use ZORRO3 cards in that thing all the time, recognizes it fine in ZORRO3 mode, sees the card, won't load the driver. Whenever the driver's loaded, it'll say it's trying to go online, and it will give me error after error after error. All right, my friend who sold me the card, he uses it in his Amiga 3000. He says, no issues at all, works absolutely perfectly. Is it my Amiga 3000 board? Gee, it's hard to say. It may or may not be my Amiga 3000 board that's just weird. The thing is, when I put it in ZORRO2 mode in my Amiga 3000 with my Amiga, absolutely perfect. Everything comes up, peaches and cream. The USB works flawlessly, no errors at all. Don't know why. Testing it out, seeing what I can come up with. The thing is leagues faster than my thylacine was. It's at least as fast as my Rapid Road, and I suspect it's a little bit faster than the Rapid Road. Everything that I do with flash drives and everything like that on the Rapid Road feels a little bit slower, maybe 10, 20, 30% slower than on this card right here. This is awesome. We finally got really good, decent, fast USB for our Amigas. And as you can see, you can do a lot of cool stuff with them. I've had CD-ROM, USB CD-ROMs working on mine. I've had USB floppies working on mine. You can see it on my USB video that I did before. There are USB audio cards that work to give your Amiga 16-bit audio. That sort of works, kind of. I mean, it functions. There's USB Ethernet adapters. I've had a nightmare of a time getting USB Ethernet adapters to work on my Rapid Road. I tried them out, never would work. Might be because it was attached to an X100, but it really shouldn't. I'll try it out on this and see if I can get Ethernet working with a USB interface. But I've had it working before on my thylacine. Used to use it all the time on my Amiga 4000 with my thylacine. So where can you get one of these cards? Well, AmiBay has them. There's a guy or two on AmiBay that sells them. There's also a link to the cards on the A1000 forums. I'll put the link in the description too, so you can go to either one of those places and order them. I ordered mine from my friend Thorsten Freund, I believe is the last name. Yep, F-R-E-U-N-D. I'll put his contact information into the description. He's made a couple of these cards, and he just sells them every now and again, makes 5 at a time. But he said he'd make some more for you guys if you want them. So I'll put Thorsten's contact information in the description. You can order one from him. He's also going to be building a couple of Amy Blaster cards. Now, I didn't know what Amy Blaster was. I'd heard the name, but I didn't know what it was. But it's compatible to Prelude in AHI, A-H-I. It is MP3, FLAC, and OGG hardware decoder on board. 5-band equalizer support. Changeable op amp, line in, line out, mic via socket jack, aux 2, aux 1, and an optional Bluetooth module. That sounds cool. It's a ZORRO based audio card for your Amiga. I'm going to order one. We'll test it out in a couple of months after it comes in. Huge thanks to my awesome patrons. You guys are absolutely fantastic. You help me be able to actually get this kind of stuff without going bankrupt, which is wonderful. If you want to join in on the Patreon fun, pop over to patreon.com/10mark. As little as $2 a month, you can help support this show. So I would say the Freeway USB is a must-buy. If you have a big box Amiga, get this thing. It's awesome to be able to just plug in USB devices in here, and they just work. It's a miracle. Thanks for joining me today. Please like and subscribe. Please comment below. Tell me what USB you use in your Amiga, what USB devices you'd like me to try to see if they function. I'd be happy to try them out. And just generally stoke up a conversation. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter. Oh, gee, sorry, Elon. It's X now, isn't it? Sorry, Space Karen. Follow me on Threads, Instagram, Facebook. All the links are right in the description. But until next time, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out in the opposite direction I normally sign out in. It's really confusing to me.